The differences between Generation 1 and Generation 2 virtual machines don't seem like a lot at first, but it does matter. It's not just the lack of COM ports and floppy drives in the Gen 2. There's a lot of improvements to those Gen 2 machines, as we saw, and you'll see some more as we go forward in the future modules. Creating those virtual machines was a pretty straightforward process, and we saw a lot of the settings that you could set for those virtual machines. One of the most important ones was starting to do some resource balance between those virtual machines and configuring our dynamic memory. Now, in configuring the dynamic memory, we had its startup memory, the minimum that we wanted the machine to run at, and the maximum memory that we wanted to run at. And sometimes that minimum wasn't quite enough to restart the computer. So we have this ability of smart paging where we create, it's almost like temporary memory, but it's on your disk, so that there was always enough startup memory for those virtual machines to get started again. Now, managing the settings for all the dynamic memory can be kind of challenging when you're trying to look at different virtual machines. So we took a look at resource metering, and since it's in PowerShell, it's a lot easier to both script this for automation and to monitor multiple machines at once. You had to turn this on, but then you could get the information from those virtual machines. We also examined how to install and update your integration services, and these are so that rather than using the generic drivers that the operating system is given for, like its keyboard, its mouse, its storage, we can get the Hyper-V drivers in, so there's a better communication with Hyper-V. And that also gave us a lot of additional features like the data exchange, time synchronization, these kind of features. And you'll want to make sure that as your operating systems get upgraded, that these integration services get upgraded as well. Then we stepped back from our server view of virtualization. We've been creating servers in virtualization to handle our shares and our applications. And instead, we took a different view with virtual desktop infrastructure, a very common thing, VDI, to have set up. And this is where your clients can use remote desktop protocol and RDP to a virtual machine that's going to be their client. And when you do that, there's some additional services that you want to have. One of them was to use the enhanced session mode, and this allowed that on that RDP session, it allowed the virtual machine, when it wanted to print or something like that, it could redirect it to a local printer where that user is sitting. Also, if you had very graphic, heavy, laden programs, we could set up and utilize Remote FX, which allows us to have a graphical processing unit installed in the host to offload all that graphic work to, and then give that to the user. So it lowers the CPU requirements on the virtual machine. This module has been a great start in working with virtualization, but we've got more work to do. One of it is how do we deal with storage? Now, we've got VHDs. This is the Generation 1 type, but we have a new type of storage, VHDX. We want to look at the differences that gives us, and not only in how much it can hold, but what kind of things we can do with it. We also want to be able to look at things like differencing drives and fiber channels and setting checkpoints on our machine so we can roll back if we have to. A lot more to do when we come back. So what's coming up next? Creating and configuring the virtual machine storage module.